Good morning, metalheads of the internet, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Metal Meltdown. Today we are talking about the debut full-length studio album from Firstborn entitled Lucky. Now, although this is the first full-length album from Firstborn, this is very likely not the first time you have heard of Firstborn. Since forming in early 2020, Firstborn have put out a slew of standalone singles and a couple of EPs and even a compilation album near the end of 2023, right before going into the studio to record this full-length debut album. And also, on top of that, even if you are not familiar with the music at all, this is the first time you've heard of Firstborn. Uncle Melty's introducing you to Firstborn for the first time. Even in that scenario, you have very likely heard at least a few of the names attached to Firstborn, because this is not a normal group, this is a super group of sorts. You've got James Lomenzo on bass, known for his work with Megadeth and Black Label Society, and David Lee Roth and White Lion, and a slew of other rock and metal bands across the course of the past 40 years. Goddamn, why was that so hard to say? Plus, also, you've got Girish Pradhan from Girish and the Chronicles on lead vocals. They're an Indian hard rock crew. Pretty sure I saw them on, like, America's Got Talent or The X Factor or something at some point. Super talented group of dudes. You've got Myron, a virtuoso guitarist on guitar, supposedly pioneer of something called soft shred, which, to be honest, I've never really heard of until this moment, and I'm not really entirely sure what it even really means, but he seems to have a strong following. People seem to really like his stuff, so there's something. And then rounding out the whole thing on drums, we have the one and only Chris Adler, formerly of Lamb of God. Wow! Here's a fun fact. This is the the only thing to my knowledge, that Chris Adler has been working on since leaving Lamb of God in 2019. Crazy! With all of this in mind, it's fairly reasonable to have fairly reasonably high expectations for this debut album. All of these guys do good work. They have a history, a reputation of working with big names and doing good work. And I think for that reason, because I had fairly reasonably high expectations for fairly reasonable reasons, I was initially very underwhelmed and let down by this album. Like, the first couple of songs just had me feeling like, oh god, I'm gonna fucking hate this. This is gonna be a generic, boring-ass fucking hard rock drivel record. It's gonna be very paint by numbers, very meat and potatoes, very cookie cutter, very simple, very bleh. And I mean, frankly, even after a couple of listens, even after some time has passed, I'm still not really a huge fan of the first cut again. I mean, it kind of sounds like something I would hear, like a licensed song I would hear in like a crappy racing game in like the mid-2000s. Like something like Flat Out, or like, you remember the Disney Pixar movie Cars? Remember that they had a video game for Disney Pixar Cars? This sounds like a song I would hear in the soundtrack for the video game for the movie Disney Pixar Cars. But as the album progressed and as I began to temper, reset, reevaluate my expectations for the album, I think I began to genuinely kind of enjoy Lucky. Not love it, but enjoy it. It's got a lot of spirit, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm, and a good amount of momentum as a result of all of that as well. It spends a lot of time pulling influence directly from a lot of like big name classic hard rock and heavy metal bands. As a result of that, I don't think the album does a great job at really establishing its own style. I constantly feel like I'm just hearing bits and pieces of other people's styles kind of like smashed into one big kind of rock and roll party blob. But like, I don't know, it works. And I think that because it pulls so much influence from so many big name classic hard rock heavy metal bands, it's going to immediately resonate with a lot of different people. Like, the song Wake Up is very big and very loud and filled with rowdy, raucous, fast-paced riffage and percussion, and it's got like a little itty bit of a punky underbite to it, very much in the vein of like classic Anthrax all the way through. And then Heaven's Return pulls a lot from like early Queensryche, I would say. It's a little darker, a little moodier. It has more expressive and intimate moments, softer chords and tones and soundscapes, but still some pretty urgent, heavy riffs and melodies and hooks as well. Shine kind of caught me off guard with its blend of like grungy, gritty, gothic sounds and influences as well. Like, Girish has this like smokier kind of vocal tone in the verses that reminds me of like classic Danzig, and then the chorus has like multi-layered vocal harmonies that brings to mind like Alice in Chains, but also some like more growly kind of like barking, screaming vocals and some more complex, nuanced, groovy riffage that brings to mind an elevated twist on Pantera even, I would say. It sounds a little messy and odd, I know, but honest to God, it kinda works. Across the album as well, there are a wide variety of like 70s, early 80s kind of like classic rock guitar chords and riffs and tones that, you know, wouldn't have been out of place on like a ZZ Top record, something from Stevie Ray Vaughan, like some of the more rowdier, kind of like hard rocky Lynyrd Skynyrd stuff. Motley Crue comes to mind. There is Van Halen influence visibly across the board, like everywhere. Like, if you didn't somehow notice Van Halen influence at some point, I have to assume you're fucking deaf. I'm not even making a joke. I'm genuinely making that assumption right now. And the closing number, Minefield, goes out of its way to reference, sample, remix, whatever term you want to use, one of the most famous parts from The Trooper from Iron Maiden, kind of meshing it into this big, loud, kind of punky, kind of metal-y, kind of party rock jam number. This album and this project overall kind of remind me of other kind of like hard rock, heavy metal kind of supergroups like Adrenaline Mob and the Winery Dogs, where they're very much wearing their hearts on their sleeve and flexing a lot of love and appreciation for classic hard rock and heavy metal, and just trying to have fun. And, you know, that's fine. Ain't nothing wrong with that. I mean, the material itself is solid. In fact, I would say I actually enjoy this overall a lot more than a lot of what Adrenaline Mob and the Winery Dogs did. But I think, much like albums from those bands, you know, it definitely could benefit from being more cohesive. I think the lyrics could be a little bit more intelligent, poignant, deep, meaningful. I think the songs, like, structurally could be more varied as well. And I'm not gonna lie, it's maybe just a little bit disappointing to see very talented people like Chris Adler downplay and dilute their style and personality in order to fit more nicely into this, well, we're just a fun rock band kind of category. I think for me, this is a 3 out of 5, but leaning dangerously close to a 2.5 out of 5. In fact, if we're being honest, we're right there on the border. It would not take much at all to push this into the 2.5 out of 5 territory for me. It's a decent record, it's decently well made, it has decent moments all the way through. But, like, at the same time, I would have liked something with a lot more character, a lot more personality, and with something just more interesting to say and offer. I'm sure that people will enjoy Firstborn, if only because of Chris Adler, if only because it does a good job reminding you of other pre-existing classic hard rock, heavy metal bands and albums, but I do fear that unless these guys start taking some big swings and start making some big decisions, you know, they risk disappearing and being forgotten about the same way that Adrenaline Mob and the Winery Dogs disappeared and were forgotten about. Like, it's fun and it gets the job done, but if Firstborn want to be more, they're gonna have to do more. Plain and simple. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I am not an expert, nor do I claim to be, contrary to very popular belief. So what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? And thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe right here so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately. Boom, other videos. Join us on Discord, and as always, you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.